Hi everyone. Can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Hi, everyone. I think people are still joining, so we'll get started in a couple minutes. Everyone just load up a new ripple.it. We'll go over the homework and then we'll move into the lesson. We'll begin at 5:05 when majority of people should be here by then. So since it's nearing 5:05 and majority of people should be here, a couple new people will be rolling in, but that's okay. So far, we're just going to go over the homework, and then we'll move into a little bit what we covered in the last two sessions, and then we'll go over the new lesson. Okay. So for this, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So first thing we'll do is we will go over the homework for last time. So what we did last time was we learned about the input function, and we also learned about adding two different data types together, how you convert one to a number or a string. And we also did splicing. This is where you take a section of a sentence or something, and you're able to divide it into sections. Okay. So the homework was creating a Mad Lib where you ask someone for, like, let's say a number, a noun, and an adjective, and then you put the result, and the result is all of them combined. So I'll show you guys how I did it. I entered a number, so let's just say I entered 5. Then I can enter 2, enter a noun. I can just say cat. Another noun, I can say dog, and an adjective, we can say blue. So then it prints out, this is my Mad Lib. Caitlin has 5 cats and 2 blue dogs. Okay. And it might sound weird, but if you can look at my thing, my directions weren't too specific. I said enter a noun. I could have said enter a plural noun, or enter a singular noun, or a plural adjective or a singular adjective. Okay. So does everybody understand what the homework was and how they were supposed to do it? If you have any questions, you can just say in the chat. One second, guys. I'm trying to access the chat. It's being weird. Okay. Well, I'm not able to access the chat, but that's fine. I'll just assume that everybody understands what's happening. And if anybody is confused, they can just open their mic and ask a question, okay? Okay. So since we printed out the result here, and the result was the entire Mad Lib combined together, let's go ahead and let's work on taking out different sections of this Mad Lib, right? So what if I wanted to remove this first part, and all I wanted to do was say Caitlin has 5 cats and blue dogs? How would I remove this? Well, what I could do is I could, I have it down here actually, I comped that out. I just move it back up here. Okay. And so we could say res, which is my result. Result equals the result. We're going to start at index 20. So if we go check 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. 20 starts at C, right? Caitlin. And then there's a function that we didn't really talk about last time, and I'll explain it now. It's the len function. And what len does is it's the length. So what it does, it'll take the length of this. And since we put it after the colon, we'll start at 20 and then we'll go to the length. And the length is a number. Okay. So now if I were to print result again, we can just comment this out. Actually, we can run it. So let's see the difference. We can enter a number. We say 5, 3, noun. We can just say Sohan, cat, and yellow. This is my Mad Lib. Caitlin has 5 Sohan and 3 yellow cat. And after splicing it, which we did, we started at index 20, which starts at C. And we go len of res and cat. And so everything was included. And it says Caitlin has 5 Sohan and 3 yellow cat. Does that make sense to everyone?
I came in late, so can you just explain that again?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I'll go over the homework again. So the homework was to create a Mad Lib. And what we would do is we would just take in different string inputs. So here we ask for a number, a noun, and an adjective. And then you have to use a Mad Lib to create the result. So my result here was Caitlin has num plus noun plus num again plus adjective plus noun. So if we run this, it says enter a number. We can say 7, another number 2, enter a noun. Say Sohan cat. Then we can just say black. So this is my Mad Lib. Caitlin has 7 Sohan and 2 black cat. Does that make sense to everyone? I'm trying to access the chat so I can see if what you guys are saying. 1 second, guys. Um, 1 second.
Can you explain the part with the just line number 9 and 10?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So what we're doing here is, here we assign res to equal this entire sentence, right? The entire sentence was, this is my Mad Lib. Caitlin has 7 Sohan and 2 black cat. But what we're doing here is we're reassigning res, and we're reassigning it to a portion of res. Okay, result. So what we learned last time, we learned about splicing. And splicing is when you start at one index and you end at another index, and you would take a chunk of, let's say, a sentence. So in this case, what if we wanted to only take Caitlin has 7 Sohan and 2 black cat, and we didn't want any of this? What we could do is we could use splicing. So we can say result equals result, and then our starting index is 20, because C starts on 20 if we were to count. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and then C is on 20. And this last function here, the ending index, what it is, it's a new function. I don't think we went over it last week, but I can introduce it. So it's the length function. And what it does is it just gets the length of what this was previously. So previously, result was this entire line. And so where this is going to go, it's going to go to the end, the length. So we can say this is maybe like what, 35 characters? So it's going to make this 35 because it does the length of this. And so if we were to print out result again, after running through it, we can say 9, 13, blue, noun would be like cat, dog, adjective would be yellow. So this is my Mad Lib. Caitlin has 9 cat and 13 yellow dog. Caitlin has 9 cat and 13 yellow dog. After we spliced it, we only got this section. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. So at the beginning it says res equals, and I know that's because like you assigned it to res. The second one, is that because you assigned it to like the whole sentence to res, or is it just always going to be that for any name that you assign it to?
Wait, what do you mean? I'm a little confused. So in the beginning, first we assigned this entire sentence to res, okay? But here we're trying to reassign res. And while we're doing this reassigning, res is still equal to this entire sentence. Does that make sense? So we would access the sentence res, and then we would splice it using 20 and then len res. That makes sense?
If you were not gonna, like, if you named the line number 6 to something completely random, would it be that equals res and then the rest of the line?
Yeah. So we could just change this to like sentence or whatever. And then if you print out sentence, it'd be the same thing. So just put in a bunch of stuff. Noun would be Sohan, cat, yellow. Caitlin has 6 Sohan and 4 yellow cats. So it's the same thing. It's a new variable in a way. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay. So the next part we're going to talk about is what if we wanted to get the final word, right? So what if we want to just take cat by itself? Okay. Well, we can do this. So we can create a new variable called final word. And we can set it equal to res again. And then we want to take a section of res. Okay. So we'll start, what we'll do is, if we look here, we have noun 2. Noun 2 is the last one we start with, right? So we can start with the length of noun 2. And we would end at the len of res, because res is the length of this entire sentence. Does that make sense? So length of noun, though, we have to put this negative sign here to show that we want to, you guys will see, 1 second. Wait, I have to print this first. So we run this to number 5, 4, so on, cat, blue. Okay, so this is my Mad Lib. Caitlin has 5 so on and 4 blue cat. And then we sliced it down to this sentence. Caitlin has 5 so on and 4 blue cat. And then we got the final word, which is just cat. So what doing this does is it takes the length of noun 2. So noun 2 is 3. And by putting this negative sign here, we can make it start from the end. So it starts from the end and goes back 3. And then it realizes, oh, I'm on C. And then by putting this length of res is the last number of the sentence. And the last number of the sentence is equal to the value of T. So it'll go all the way till T. When we print out final word, we get cat. Does that make sense to everyone? I can't see the chat, so if everyone could just like maybe unmute themselves, that would be great.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, good. So now I can move on to the lesson for today. So today we'll be going over if statements, and we'll go over if statements, we'll go over for loops. It'll be a little bit more confusing, but if anybody has any questions, they can just unmute and ask, okay? Okay. So first off, we'll go over what we went over last time and the 2 times. So for anyone new, to print something out, we just say hello world. And run this, it just says print hello world, okay. To reassign variables or to assign variables, you could just say x equals 1. You put the name of it equals, and then what's going to be after. You can say s equals, this is a string. If we wanted to add something else to s, we can do s plus equals another string. So I can say, and then if we were to print out s, so we print out hello world, and then we say this is a string and this is another string, okay? Because what the plus equals function does is it takes what it already has, so we already know that s is, this is a string, and it'll add it to itself. So it adds, this is another string. So that's why this is a string and this is another string goes together. And you get, this is a string, this is another string, okay? And so what we went over last time, which was a new concept, is asking for input. So we can just say whatever, just call it t, for example, equals int. Let's just say we're asking somebody for an integer. Input. I say enter an integer. Okay, so let me just comment this out. And these are multi-line comments when you put 3 quotes above and below. Okay, and then what if we wanted to add 2 to that? So we could do t equals plus equals 2. And you can do this. You can say t equals plus equals 2. Or if you want to do it more simply, you can just do t equals t plus 2. They both have the same outcome. Either one will work. So if we were to print out t, just to show that, put in 5. I have to type here. 5. And it prints out 7 because t equals t plus 2. But if we want to do this one as well, put in 5. T equals t plus 2. It's the same thing. Okay? So I'll just use the first one because that's what I prefer. So we can just comment this line out. And so now we're going to move into if statements. So if someone would like to unmute themselves, what do you guys think an if statement really is? just based off the name? Anyone?
It checks.
True or false?
Okay, so someone said if it checks to true or false, that's sort of correct, but can also do a lot more things. So let's try writing in. So if we say, so far we just asked somebody for an integer. Now let's check that integer. If t is greater than 0, print the number you entered is greater than 0. Okay, we can comment this line out here. Let's run that. So if I type in 5, it says the number you entered is greater than 0. But what if I typed in 2?
You spelled entered wrong.
I know, I just missed an E. It's fine. Yeah. 2 will still give me something because it's greater than 0. But if I type in like -1, it doesn't return anything. And -1 doesn't return anything because -1 is not greater than 0 in this case. So what it does is it takes that input and it checks it here. If that value is greater than 0, it'll do this. But since -1 isn't, it doesn't. Okay. And so far, if the value they entered is not greater than 0, nothing happens. The code just stops running. So what if we wanted to keep checking for values? So what if we said elif, and this is sort of saying like else if. So it says, if this works, print this. Else, if it doesn't work, we can do something else. So we can say if t is equal to 0, if t is equal to 0, we can print out t, we need that. T is 0. Oops, what happened? Second, guys, hopefully nothing disappeared. Okay, so elif, we can say if t is equal to 0, we can print out t is equal to 0. T equal to 0. If we run this, we entered an integer. Let's say we entered in 5. It works. It said the number you entered is 0. But we entered 0. This is t is equal to 0. So because it didn't satisfy this first condition, because 0 is not greater than 0, it moves on to the second one and it checks. If 0 is equal to 0, then it prints it out, and which it did, because it is. And then next we can have like an elf. We can check one more time. We can say elif t is equal to 1 for say. We can print out t is equal to 1, and I'll do the same thing. So we put 1. But see why that didn't run is because it checks here first, and it goes in order from top to bottom, and that number is already greater than 0, and this is satisfied. That's why it won't play any of this. Okay. So now we can just do an else statement, and an else statement is pretty much if nothing of these worked, the default it should do is print your number is negative. Okay. So I put in negative, all this stuff. So we have letters in there. All of that. Does your number is negative because it's a negative number. Okay. Does that make sense?
What would it print if it was a decimal?
If it was a decimal, so we can run that. We can say minus 4 point. Let's just put in 4 point. It won't work because what we did here is, see, when we asked them for an integer, and an integer doesn't have any decimals. So what we could do is we can put a float. We can turn it into a float. And we could say, so now if I type in 5 here, 5 will work. And if I type in 32 point, all these random numbers, it still works because floats account for integers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So if you didn't have float, the decimal wouldn't work?
Yeah.
Okay.
So usually when we're writing programs, it's safer to use float because float can account for multiple things. It accounts for decimals and it also includes integers. So it's an integer, but it has more capabilities, which is probably better for our code. Okay.
Mhm.
Let's try another one. We can say, so first let's comment all of this out. So we can grab this, move it down there. Okay. So we can say S is equal to input. We can ask them to enter in a word. Okay. And let's say we want them to enter in a specific word. So let's say we have the word in mind and we're going to say word is equal to banana. Okay. And so we can check this. We can say if S equals word, print you guess correctly. But if they didn't guess correctly and their word was not banana, say else print that is incorrect. Okay, so we run this, enter in a word. So this makes it nicer actually. Let's say I type in orange. That is incorrect because it's not a banana. But if I type in banana, you guessed correctly, the word is banana. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? How if statements work?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So now we're going to move into another type of data type, and this is called a list, okay? A list or an array, they're relatively similar. So what a list is, it's just a sequence of numbers or letters. So we can just say array equals ARR for short, and then we can have a list of numbers. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? And if we ran this, nothing's going to happen. Everything's commented out. And so if we printed out array, what it'll do is it'll just show us what's the contents of array. So array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which we assigned it, which makes sense, which is good. Okay. And so let's say we wanted to print out a certain section of array. And you guys should remember, we did something for the homework and it was called splicing, where we took the different sections of words apart. Okay. So now let's say we want to take a different section of this word apart. And remember how indexes start at 0. So we're going to say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 5. Okay. And let's say we want to start at index 2, which is the 3, and we want to go to 5. But this index only goes to 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're doing 5 because this goes to this number minus 1. And fifth index minus 1 is the 4th index. So if we run this, it prints out 1, 2, 3, and then it grabs 2 to 5, 3, 4, 5. Does that make sense? And what we could do is we could all just print the length of this array. So print the length array and run it. It's going to say 5 because there's 5 items. Okay. So that's how we can use arrays. So arrays are usually really useful. You can use arrays to store many things. You can use an array to store certain number of values, or you can just say like test scores. So we can just create a value called test scores equals, let's say people didn't do very well. They got like a 76, an 80, a 45. Some people got 90s, 92, and 100. Okay. And now we can move into for loops, which is pretty cool. So a for loop is something that will loop multiple times. So instead of printing out numbers 1 to 100, instead of printing out 1, then saying print statement and say 2, that is irrelevant because that takes too long. Printing out 100 lines in 100 print statements is not the way right to do it. So what we would do is we'd say for I in range, and the range function works like the index function does. It starts on the lowest one you want and then goes to the highest one minus 1. So let's say we want to start on 1. and we want to go to the highest one. So we say 101 because we want to go to 100. And then we put the colon there and we say print I. Okay, so I in this case is the variable name. So if we were to just comment all of this out and run it, as we can see here, it prints out 1 all the way to 100. Okay? So this is what we call a for loop. It prints out, this is the variable name, so that's what we refer to this, okay? And it goes through all of these numbers. And what we could do is we have this test scores function value here, right? So we could just say print I in test scores, okay? And if I is confusing, we can say print score in test scores. I have to change this to score as well. We do that, it prints out all the scores, 76, 80, 45, 90, 92, and 100. Okay. So this is a for loop. We might have a project later where we learn more about the for loop, but for now, that's all we're gonna get into it. And it's pretty simple as well. So if anyone has any questions, they can just ask now because we'll be moving on. But we'll still be working with it. But does anyone have any questions?
No.
Nope, okay. So we're just gonna move on. Okay, so what if we wanted to say x equals 1, okay? And then we say for I in, we say for I in range 1 to 5, x equals x plus 1, then we print out x. Okay, so you don't really have to use the I variable. It just, what will happen? So this is just gonna print out x plus 1 5 times, 1 to 5. So it prints out x plus 1. So x is 1 right now. So 1 plus 1, and we print out x. And then we do it again. Since 1 plus 1 is 2, x is now 2. So 2 plus 1, 3. 3 plus 1, 4. 4 plus 1, 5. And since we're doing 1 to 4, 1 to 5, it's 5 minus 1, which is 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's only going to repeat 4 times, which it did over here. Okay? So that's another way we can increment through numbers. Let's say we had a bunch of animals, right? Another way we could work with arrays is they don't just have to be numbers. They can also be strings. So we can say cat. We can say dog. And we can just say bird. Okay? And then just say for word in animals, print word. And this is similar to printing out the test scores. So if we run this, it's just going to print all the animals, cat, dog, and bird. Okay? And since indexes start at 0 in many coding languages, how we'll go over this is this is 0, 1, 2. So we can comment out this for loop, and we can say print out animals. And let's say we wanted the print out dog. What number would go here? Does anyone want to say it out loud? Unmute themselves.
I'm gonna guess 1.
Yeah, because 0, 1, 2. So if we want to print out dog, we would just type here 1 and run this. Did I put something? Oh, yeah, it's in the for loop. My bad. So, yeah. And a dog. Okay. If we want to print out cat, we say animals of 0. Now prints out dog, cat. And lastly, if we want to print out bird, we can say we're animals of 2. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
And let's say we wanted to add all the numbers in an array and take the average, right? So that's usually what we do a lot. So we can just say average. So we just say scores equals, let's say we want to take the average number of scores that a class got on their tests. 42, 35, 100, 102, 110. So a lot of people did good, and there's a couple people who did really poorly. So what we can do is we can use the sum function in Python. So we can print out the sum of scores. So once we print out the sum of scores, to find the average, we have to divide it by how many there are. And so let's say we didn't know how many there were going to be. We're going to say print out sum of scores. We can say divided by scores. We can say divided by len.scores. So that'll give us the average. So right now it's running the function. So give it a second. Maybe I could stop this and just comment all this out. So 80.833333. If we want to check this ourselves, we could. We can just use the calculator. You say 96 plus 42 plus 35 plus 100. I have to restart. So 96 plus 42. Restart. Clear it all. 96 plus 42 plus 35 plus 100 plus 102 plus 110 equals that. And there are 6 numbers divided by 6. You get 80.823. So that is the correct average. And if we wanted to save this as a value, you can just say average equals. Then we would just copy all of this, paste it here. Let me say average. And it'll give us the same thing, 80.833333. Okay, so now that we've gone over the for loop and some of the functions in Python, there's another loop I would like to go over. It's called the while loop. So what the while loop does is it does something while a condition is true. So it's sort of like a for loop, but instead of moving through numbers, it just does something while a condition is true. So let's say we're asking our friend if they can drive, okay? So we can say drive equals false, because right now we don't want to be able to assume if they're allowed to drive. So we'll just say that they cannot drive. So we can say while drive is equal to false, we can ask someone allowed, we can just say input, enter yes if you can drive and no if you cannot. Okay, and then we can say if allowed equals yes, print you are allowed to drive, else if we can say elif allowed is equal to no, print you are not allowed to drive. Okay. So what do you guys think this is going to do? Does anyone want to unmute their mic and explain how it's going to work?
I can try.
Okay, go.
So it's the code's gonna ask you. It's gonna print out enter yes if you can drive and no if you cannot. And then if you say no, if you say yes, then it's gonna print you are allowed to drive. But if you say no, then it's gonna print you're not allowed to drive. But if you don't put any of those things, then it's not going to do anything because we didn't put anything for that.
Exactly. So this is going to keep repeating while drive equals false. So let's try running this. Enter yes if you can drive. And so I'm 16, I can drive. Yes. You're allowed to drive. Enter yes if you can drive. Oh, it asks us again. That's weird. You say yes. Oh, again and again and again. Well, the reason this keeps happening is because we'll do this while drive is equal to false. but we never set drive to equal to true. So it doesn't know when to stop. And so if someone's allowed to drive, we can stop asking them. And we can say, if they say yes, we can say drive is equal to true. Okay. Let's run it again. So let's just say no. I'm not allowed to drive because allowed is equal to no. I'm not allowed to drive. Say yes, you're allowed to drive. And since allowed equals yes, it prints you're allowed to drive. It sets drive to true. And then it goes back to the top of this loop. And it sees that it's only going to happen if drive is equal to false. But wait a second, we just said drive to true. So this is not going to work. And the loop doesn't go through. And the code just ends.
Wouldn't you need to like do it case sensitive? Because if they put it like all caps yes, then it would.
Yeah. So this is just an example, right? So usually when you're doing it, you'd be able to do, there's a function in Python where you can take their input and you can just make it all into lowercase. So what we can do
it's
is
input.lower. Input.lower.
Yeah. So we could use the lower function to make, what is all of this? So we could do just do dot lower. Okay. And let's just say, right? What do we type in all caps yes? It says you are allowed to drive, because what it does is it takes in my account, it takes in my input, it makes it all lowercase, and now my input is now equal to yes, all lowercase yes, and now it checks. Okay. And then we can say else, if they don't type in anything, we can just say, well, if they do type in something but it's not what we want, we can say that was not an option, please try again. I type in all that. That was not an option, please try again. Say no, no. I put in all caps yes. If we see you're allowed to drive. Okay. So these are the two main loops in Python, the for loop and the while loop. The while loop is a little risky because sometimes if you don't specify or you don't do something correctly, then it could just break your code and crash it, because the while loop runs under a certain specification. And if that specification is never resolved, then it's just going to keep running and your code will crash. This happened to me many times in the past. This is why I like the for loop better, because the for loop only runs a certain amount of times. The while loop runs under a certain condition. And if that condition is never met, then it's going to keep running and lagging out your code. Okay. So we went over arrays, we went over for loops, and we went over while loops. So now we can just comment all of this out. And let's just create a new array. Oh, actually, we can create a new list. Okay. And what it'll be called, we can just call it our ARR again. Actually, there. Okay, there we go. We say to a list, and we say range. And we want to go from 1 to 100 and only skip by tens. So we can do 1, 101, and 10. Because what happens is the first one talks about where your starting number is. The second one is your ending number. Okay, and our ending number here is going to be 100 because it's this number minus 1. And then the third value to put in is your step size. So we want to do every 10. So it's going to print out 1, 10, 20. And so if we were to print out array, it prints out 1, 11, because it adds 10. So 1 plus 10. So we could just make this 0. And if we were to run it, we get 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. If we want a longer list, we can just make it skip by 2 only. And you get all the way to 100. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
For the last one, could you put a float?
Yeah. So if we were to say 2.5, oh, so it won't work because we set it to be an integer. So if we were to change this, so lists are normally set to integers. So if we can make it as a float, I have to put this extra parenthesis at the end. I don't know why it's not working. This usually works. I think we might have to put it inside here. This usually works. I'm not sure why it's not working.
Maybe you need to change like the two integers. Maybe it only takes floats.
Maybe. I think I have too many parentheses here.
Statement only takes integers.
Yeah, okay. So I guess it only takes integers then, guys. Yeah. So we just do 2 instead.
Do you know why?
Why the float? Oh, the range function only takes not the range function. The range function only takes integers. So you'd have to modify it in some way to do floats.
Well, it won't work unless you do like something else.
I'm not very sure why it's not working. Usually I code in other languages, so I'm not very good at Python. Okay. Anyways, so let's do a little project right now. After we've learned the for loop and the if loop, the if statement, I want everyone to try and work on this and instead determine if n is a prime number.
I already have this code written somewhere.
Okay, so if we want to determine if n is a prime number, so everybody work on this, and I'll show you I'll show you the answers in a couple of minutes. Okay.
Mom, I already
Around
have.
5:55, I'll show you guys the answers. There's 5 minutes left. Okay.
He asked make code that can find prime numbers, but I already have the written down somewhere. Code that can. Ippure. I have the code written down.
Okay. Just give us a second. We'll wait for everyone else to finish, and we'll come back in 5 minutes. Okay. Everyone, try to work on your own.
This ends in 5 minutes, right?
The class ends in 10 minutes, but we'll all come back together in 5 minutes to go over the answers. Okay, I'll show you guys if you need a little bit of help on how to do it. Okay.
Mm.
Okay, so since it's now 5:55, we're going to be going over the answers. So we were supposed to determine if a number is prime, okay? So the first thing we have to do is ask them for an integer. N equals int input, and we say input a number. Okay, and then we can say temp equals false. So we're saying already that it's not prime, okay? So we can say for x in range 2 to n, so whatever they typed in. So we're going to start at 2 and we're going to go to n, whatever they typed in. And we can just say if n 2, sorry, x, right? If n of x is equal to 0, we say print n. You could use the comma like someone said earlier. So string of n plus equals equals plus string of x plus the multiplication. That's not right. Multiplication plus n string of n over x. And it's not how you spell print, so P-R-I-N-T. Okay. We'll set temp equal true. And if you don't want a loop to repeat over again, there's a statement in Python, we call it break. And so by putting this break statement here, it will break out of the loop and it'll just stop looping. Okay. And then we can say, that's the loop, right? So we made it go through all the numbers. If temp is equal to false, print string n is a prime number. Okay, so you run this. Let's comment this out first. Run it, and we say 13. So 13 is a prime number because it's prime. Okay. Does that make sense to everyone? If it doesn't make sense, I can go over it next week, but since we're running out of time, I think that'll be the end of class for today. What I can do is I can copy this link and I can paste it in the chat. So you all, actually, I don't think I have access to the chat, but I can ask someone to send an email out and it'll go to all of you and it'll just hold all the code that we wrote. Okay. Does anyone have any more questions?
I wasn't there last class, so I couldn't find the recording on the document. So how will I be able to see the recording?
So the recording should be on the document. If my recording is not there, then the person who taught the session from last class, for the person who taught the class from last session, his recording will be there. And it's pretty much most of the same topic. So you can just look at that and it should give you a pretty good explanation as to what's going on.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions? Nope. Okay, then I'll just end the call. And thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.